and welcome back to the It's Not Supposed to Be Pretty podcast. My name is Kyle Stapleton, and I am your host, coming to you live from the Subaru recording studio, which is really just my car. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into this. So as you may or may not know, the next several episodes are going to be about taking a personal inventory. However, before we get to the point of taking a personal inventory, a couple of things need to happen. Now, in the recovery community and in any 12-step program, there are several things that come before we embark on that journey of taking what we call a personal inventory. And whether it's AA or NA, CA, OA, whether it's Sex and Lovers Anonymous, various 12-step groups. Step number one, you're always admitting that you're powerless over something and that your life has become unmanageable. So what does unmanageable mean? Well, unmanageable means difficult or impossible to manage, manipulate, or control. So what might that look like, right? Well, say you don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol, but maybe you jump from relationship to relationship to relationship. Maybe you have a string of 2 or 3 month relationships and they end, and within a week, you're in another one. And there's no space in between. There's no healing. There's no growth. There's no reflection. Maybe all of those relationships felt like you were with the same person. They just had a different name and a different face. Maybe you've had a bunch of partners. Maybe you have caught STDs because of that. Maybe you have multiple children with multiple partners. I would consider that unmanageable. Perhaps you bounce from job to job, and perhaps no matter what job you're at, no matter how much they pay you, no matter your position, no matter the management style, no matter what your coworkers are like, you just can't seem to get along. You're always in your manager's office. You're always fighting with your coworkers. The money's never enough. It's all bullshit. You're never happy. I would consider that unmanageable. Maybe you love to shop. Maybe you're on all of the websites. Maybe you have all of the apps. Maybe you've got all the deals, all the Groupons, all the coupons, but you're thousands of dollars in credit card debt on multiple credit cards. You can't make rent. You can't make mortgage. You're having difficulty paying your car. You're having difficulty paying the water, the electric. Right? I would call that unmanageable. Maybe you've had a lot of stuff happen to you in your childhood. Maybe you went through a lot. Now, I didn't. I have to say that right off the bat. I'm very blessed. Really, truly, I'm very blessed. I had wonderful parents. Were they the perfect couple? No, but nobody is. But they were good parents. Were they the perfect parents? No. Again, perfection doesn't exist. But I have literally heard stories of people that were physically abused by their parents. I've heard stories of people that were sexually abused by family members, right? That didn't happen to me at all. There was no abuse. Zero. Like double goose egg. Like, I don't know how much bigger I can make the zeros. Like, there was no abuse at all. My parents, I played every sport you could imagine. My parents taught me how to ski. My dad taught me how to hunt. My dad taught me how to fish. Every Sunday we were going out. We went to the park. I got to go to concerts and Phillies games and Eagles games. Like, my dad taught me how to throw a baseball, how to shoot hoops and basketball, tried to teach me how to play football, right? My mom took me to all the karate, all the soccer, all the practices. She took me to I got to take singing lessons. Like, my mom took me to all of the singing lessons, right? I was in the choir. I was in plays. My parents went to every single one. I was very fortunate, but not everybody is, right? Like I've said, I've heard stories of people that experienced physical abuse. I heard stories of people that experienced sexual abuse. I've heard stories of people who grew up around active substance abuse, right? And maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you had the unfortunate reality of having to experience that growing up, right? And maybe you never were in a position where you could go seek help. Maybe you never sought therapy for that, right? And because of that, maybe you've got a bunch of unresolved stuff going on and it projects out into your life. Maybe your mental, like you could be suffering from anxiety. You could be suffering from depression. Maybe you have schizophrenia. Maybe you're bipolar, and maybe it's not well managed. But that's I also. Sorry, guys, my allergies are getting to me a little bit today. I would also consider those things unmanageable, right? I would consider any of those things that I just listed an unmanageable life, right? So when our life becomes unmanageable, I think that people that would stand up and say that, yes, my life is unmanageable, would also say that I experienced a lot of pain. I know I did. I experienced a lot of mental and emotional pain. Now, what is pain? So the definition I have here of pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. So we all know pain in a physical sense, right? You a broken limb, a cut, you get into a fight, you're going to experience some physical pain, but there's also mental pain. There's also emotional pain. Excuse me. Right? There's the pain of broken relationships, broken homes, broken friendships. There's the pain of feeling like you're just everybody's doormat. Everybody just walks all over you because you don't know how to stand up and advocate for yourself. There's the pain of being lied to, being cheated on. There's the pain of you're abusive. You mentally abuse people. You verbally abuse people. Maybe you've hit people before. I put hands on my friends. I'll tell you a story. I was playing cards. This was years ago. I was with a couple of my friends and we were playing cards and I drank way too much whiskey. I don't even remember what my friend said to me, but I'd been friends with this kid since the 8th grade. We were in our mid-20s. I put my hands on him. I knocked somebody out at a Halloween party. So, like it's a real thing. And that causes pain because what that does is that fractures friendships. It's very difficult to come back from things like that. And people have a very low tolerance for bullshit, especially if it's repeated. I repeated a lot of bullshit. I could bounce around from friend group to friend group to friend group to friend group. And at first, everybody liked me, right? At first, everyone, oh, you're so funny, you're so nice, you're so sweet, you're so smart, you're going places, you're like, I love your stories. And then they hung out with me enough. And they would spend some serious time with me, right? And in episode 5, I talked about this mask, right? We love to wear a mask. We love to make people fall in love with a version of us that's not real. And eventually, they see through the mask, right? Because there's always some type of slip, right? I might have gotten too drunk, and I might have been cracking jokes about somebody all night, just completely tearing them down. I may have hit on somebody's girlfriend. Heck, one of my friends may have been dating a girl. They may have been broken up. I might have hooked up with that girl. And I'm not saying, look, man, I'm not proud of that. Okay. I'm not saying like, oh, look at me. I'm the man. No. That was wrong. And I lost friends over that. Friendships became fractured over that. Friendships that never quite recovered because of that. And I'm not saying that I would have maintained these friendships for the rest of my life. But what I'm saying is that I fractured more than several friendships because of that type of behavior. Whether it be hooking up with a former girlfriend or cracking jokes, tearing people down. Or just being shit-faced all the time. People don't want to deal with somebody who's shit-faced all the time, who's getting angry, who's yelling, who is, trying to, I'm getting like so fired up right now. Driving. I always drove. I made this one poor guy follow me home from a birthday party. It was years ago. I was 25. It was 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like driving like this. Like I literally have to have one eye open because that's the only way I can stop the road from being 4 roads. Literally, and this poor kid, he follows me all the way home to make sure I don't kill anybody. One day you wake up and these people stop calling you. They stop inviting you places. You might see them every couple of months and they might go, oh, you remember when we did this? You remember when we did that? And you have to sit there with a poker face and you have to, wow, I didn't get invited to that. Hey, let me know when you guys are getting together because I really want to get together. Oh yeah, well, absolutely. Absolutely. They're not going to let you know. They don't want to deal with your bullshit. They don't want to fucking deal with you. I don't want to fucking deal. Like, the guy that I am today, looking back at who I used to be, I wouldn't have wanted to deal with me either. But that's pain because you're lonely. Because you don't really have anybody. Because everybody that you've met, they've fallen in love with a version of you that doesn't exist because you run on fear. Because I had fear of people finding out who I really was. So I pretended to be somebody I wasn't to get other people to like me and approve of me. And when they found out who I really was, because I was an asshole and a jerk off, they didn't want to be friends with an asshole and a jerk off. Matter of fact, when I was trying to add people on my social media pages to promote my podcast to get as many people to see as possible, there's people that I sent requests to, and that request is just sitting in a box. They probably saw that request and they just clicked ignore. Because the version of me that they knew caused wounds and caused damage. Right? And their boundary is to not have anything to do with me. That's their boundary. Their boundary for their own sanity, for their own peace, for their own serenity is to not have anything to do with me. Because the version of me that they knew was a person that caused a lot of damage. And they've got full autonomy to do that. They have full autonomy. And I don't take it personally because I understand, because I've been through the steps and I understand the person I used to be. But that's still painful. And it still stings a little bit, And that is something you got to ask yourself too. There we go. There's the thought. I got it. This is really cool. I'm still kind of getting used to being on camera. All right, back to the episode. So is your life unmanageable? Are you in pain? See, here's the truth that a lot of people don't want to hear. If you don't believe your life is unmanageable, and if you don't believe that you're in enough pain, you're not going to want to do anything to get better. You're going to lie to yourself. You're going to rationalize. Your mind's going to come up with whatever bullshit it can produce. And you're going to continue down the same road, making the same mistakes, ending up in the same situations, experiencing the same types of pain over and over and over again. And I'll tell you what, it's got nothing to do with, well, I've tried. From my own experience, I don't know about you, from my own experience, it had nothing to do with, well, nobody's going to understand. I've tried. It's not for me. I don't believe in it because I used all of those lines before. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I've used I don't believe in therapy. Oh, the 12 steps. I'm not like these people. I never went to jail. I never got a DUI. I never lost my family. I never got fired from a job. I never drank when I woke up in the morning. I never drank and drove that many times. I was never violent. Anyway, let me stop my rant. I used all of those excuses, every single one. Because the truth is I didn't believe my life was unmanageable. I still thought I could do it. Because I looked at my past and I was like, all right, well, I dropped out of my first college with a 1.9 GPA. I joined the military, got sent home on a medical discharge, and I went back to community college, and here I am. I'm making 3.5s, 3.6s. I'm a dean's list student. I get asked to join one honor society. Boom. I get into nursing school at a good university. Boom. I'm making dean's list. Boom. Another honor society. Boom. Graduating with honors. Boom. I did all that by myself. I paid for it. Nobody helped me. This and that and blah, 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 blah. And I looked at all that crap. And by the way, I had a lot of help. I had a lot of tutoring. I did study groups. I didn't do it all by myself. I had to retake a class. I had to stay behind an extra semester. I didn't get to take my boards right away. I had to spend all summer studying for them because I didn't focus on passing the test to get the number to take the boards in my last semester of nursing school. But I lied to myself. My mind lied to me because my mind's good at lying to me. And I didn't believe that my life was unmanageable because I hadn't been put through enough pain yet. Because pain is the ultimate touchstone for any kind of change. And if you haven't been beaten up enough yet, you're not going to believe you need to change. And that's the truth. And I really wish there was somebody out there that was listening to this that could say, well, I don't want to go through all that pain. I've been through some. I don't want to experience any more. But here's the other truth is that until you've been through enough pain and until you've been brought to a point to where you have no other choice but to realize that your life is unmanageable, you might find a little motivation. But motivation is temporary, and I see it all the time. I see it all the time. Somebody comes into a meeting and they're in tears and they admit they have a problem and they share a little bit about what their life is like, and they get fired up for a minute and they start doing some things they're supposed to do. And then sure enough comes a day where you stop seeing them. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. I was one of those people. I was blessed enough to have an opportunity to come back. And when I came back, I had reached a point. I had reached a point where my life was unmanageable and where I was in enough pain. And where somebody had the balls, because my higher power worked through them, to tell me I had a problem. And when they told me I had a problem, the light bulb went off. And I wish I could tell you that I went to that first meeting without kicking and screaming, but I didn't. I kicked, I screamed, I pissed, I bitched, I moaned, and I called them out on their past because they had a past too. Because everybody has a past. And I'm not saying that because I'm proud. I'm saying because that's how sick I was. You're going to talk to me about the way that I drink? Well, then I'm going to talk to you about the way you used to party. But okay, I'll go to a meeting. Because the light bulb had gone off. The truth had been revealed. And I knew what I was. I knew what problem I had. But the pain had to get bad enough for me to get to that spot. Because if the pain had not been bad enough, I would have had an excuse. I would have had a rationalization. I would have been able to justify. And I'm not saying this because I'm pulling it out of my ass. I'm saying it from experience. I would have found some way to disqualify myself from getting help. The first time, I had to be put through enough pain to admit I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. And then at 3 years and 2 months of sobriety, I had to be put through enough pain in life, losing my father suddenly, getting a new job in 2 months after that, having a giant hole caused by the loss of my father that I tried to fill with food, tried to fill with porn, tried to fill with the gym, tried to fill with shopping, tried to fill with supplements, tried to fill with dating. And what happened, right? I told you in episode 1 what happened. I got my 3-year coin December of 2024. And a couple weeks later, one of my coworkers asked me how I was doing, right? You remember from episode 1? What did I say to them? I said, I'm just trying not to jump off a bridge today, right? Humor wrapped in seriousness, because that's how it felt. In sobriety. Constantly angry, constantly fighting with people, constantly pushing people away. Leave me alone. I don't need you. F this, F that. And once again, I had to be brought to a point of pain. I had to be beaten and brought to my knees by life to admit that I needed therapy. Just like I had to be brought to my knees by drugs and alcohol to admit to myself that I'm an alcoholic and that I need help. So what is that? What did I just describe? What did I just describe? Your life's unmanageable. My life was unmanageable. I was put through a lot of pain. And what was that third thing, right? I finally admitted. I finally was willing to admit that I need help. So what is that? That is called surrender. That's called surrender. What is surrender? Surrender means to give up control, possession, or power over something. I just want to let that marinate for a minute, right? Surrender means to give up control, possession, or power over something. Until you're willing to admit that you can't do it anymore on your own. And until you're willing to acknowledge that you cannot go through any more pain, you are not going to surrender because you still believe that you can do it yourself. Ooh. I gotta take another sip of water. Now, I really truly hope that there's somebody out here that listens to this that resonates with them, and maybe they've started going through the ringer. And maybe it shook something up in them enough to where they don't have to go through it anymore. All I can speak is from my own experience. I'm very stubborn. Very, very stubborn. I'm unwilling to admit defeat. I'm unwilling to admit that my way doesn't work. I'm unwilling to admit that somebody else might be right. I'm unwilling to admit that somebody else's way might work, right? It happened before sobriety, and it happened before therapy, and it can still happen on any given day. And until I'm put through enough pain, I will not surrender. Pain is this touchstone for change. Pain is the ultimate touchstone for change. It's the ultimate touchstone for growth. I wish it weren't so, but from my experience, that is the truth. So we admit our life is unmanageable. That is the first step for any kind of change, any kind of growth, any kind of recovery. You fuck all the other episodes, right? I should have probably started with this. Once you finally admit, I can't do it anymore. Once you finally admit, oh fuck, my life's unmanageable. That is a great place to be. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. That's an even better place to be because you're finally in a position to say, my way doesn't work. But you look like you have a way that works. I want to try your way. So then you make the decision. I made the decision to try somebody else's way. I admitted my way wasn't working anymore. Then that brings me to the second, right? The second step, surrender, right? I've admitted my life's unmanageable. I've been brought to my knees by the pain. I don't want to do it anymore. My way doesn't work. Now I'm at surrender. I'm willing to surrender to something greater than me. For me, in the beginning, it was AA. That was because AA is greater than I will ever be. The 12 steps are greater than I will ever be. The rooms of AA, the way that we help drug addicts and alcoholics get sober and stay sober and rebuild their lives, the way my life has been rebuilt, the way I've watched other men and women rebuild their lives is a power greater than I will ever be. And I surrendered to that because that's greater than me. You surrender to something greater than yourself. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's God. I don't care if it's a 12-step program. I don't care if it's, nature or time, or I don't care if it's like the power of a group of friends or community or whatever. But you find something that's greater than you to surrender to, and you fucking surrender to it. Once you're willing to believe that you can't do it anymore, then you surrender. And then after we surrender, then we have to make a decision. And why do we have to make a decision? Because motivation is temporary. Motivation will fade. I've seen it happen. It's happened to me countless times in recovery. Motivation is temporary. Motivation fades. We must make a decision. I'll end with this. In the literature that I read, we come to step 3. If you're in recovery, you know what step 3 says. And when I did step 3 with my sponsor made it really, really simple for me. My sponsor said step 3 for you is just a decision to keep doing AA. It's just a decision to keep going through with the steps. And here's why that makes sense. Because after I make this decision, the text tells me, next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. The first of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. And that is the personal inventory. And that we will get into next episode. I just want to say real quick, I have 123 plays on Spotify. I've got 6,000 views on YouTube, 17 followers on Spotify, 18 subscribers on YouTube, over 5,000 followers on Instagram, over 2,000 followers on TikTok. I appreciate and love all your support. Once again, I could not do this without you. My name is Kyle Stapleton, and this is It Is Not Supposed to Be Pretty.